Welcome back to the Books Brothers podcast. I'm Flez, and I'm here with my brothers from different mothers.
I'm Garrett.
I'm
Thomas.
I'm Matt.
I'm Rob.
Today we're covering Principle 1, Enhance Your Love Maps from The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman and Nan Silver. But first, for our first segment, they don't make them like they used to.
Let's talk a little bit about Blockbuster. So we all went there as a kid, I'm sure. I don't know about you guys, but I remember the day where you got your own Blockbuster card was pretty exciting. And obviously now we have access to way more movies than we ever used to, but why did it seem more fun to go to Blockbuster and pick out a movie?
Didn't it kind of feel like a little Black Friday shopping sometimes? Like you'd go to the section to see the movie that you wanted to rent, but the case wouldn't be there. You know, they'd have like cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes
the anticipation was that was really a thrill.
So it was like a scarcity, like, oh my gosh, I've got to get there. I've got to get that movie before anybody else does, you know?
Remember they charge you for not rewinding your VHS?
No, I did not.
Yeah, they would. They'd be like,
Yeah,
that's 45 cents. Sorry, you're really going to be hurting next week. Back when 45 cents could buy you like a double cheeseburger, fries, and a large Coke.
Dude, that's
Yeah,
wild.
but they always those candy prices were always pretty large. You know, it'd be like $4 for a thing of Junior Mints and Nerds.
Speaking
It's such
of
a good idea, though, to make it feel like you're at the movie theater, though, right? I mean,
It's
true.
the
Mike
experience.
and Ike's. What do you guys think is the most obscure candy that you only see or get at the movie theater?
Cookie
You don't
dough
see or
bites.
get it. Oh,
cookie
yeah.
dough, but yeah.
Let's
Those
just
are
ready
like-
for that one.
Oh, yeah. That's an easy one.
Raisinets.
Sour
Raisinets.
Patch straws.
I only ever eat Raisinets at the movie theater, I feel like.
What was your guys' go-to when you would be at
Cookie dough
theater?
bites, for sure. Yeah,
Junior
every
Mints.
time.
Yeah.
Junior Mints, yes,
The
Matt.
answer is
I'm on,
insane.
Every time.
I'm feeling that
Icy.
for sure.
I still get those when I go to the movie
Icy,
theater.
Polar
I
ices.
think I do too, but it's been a while.
What do you got, Rob?
Those Polar ices.
Oh,
Like
okay.
Mike and Ike's?
No, he's talking about like the machine.
The slushy.
Oh,
the
those,
slushy
yeah,
machines.
those are good.
Yeah, those are
This will
good.
give you a brain teaser real quick.
Careful.
Yeah, you wash it down with some popcorn though.
Hey,
But back to the kind of the initial, would you be happy if Blockbuster came back, or would you not care?
I feel like I'm indifferent. But
like if the
no-
world
no
changed
one
and
would go.
streaming wasn't a thing anymore? Or just
Yeah.
you had the option to go to
Well,
Blockbuster.
If you went back in time.
Didn't you guys always find it funny when they were like, "Do you want to add an extra night to it for
Oh,
$2?"
yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna watch it like twice in 2 days. You know.
The upsell, baby.
That's funny.
My last memory of Blockbuster is witnessing a dude try to steal Yu-Gi-Oh cards from the Blockbuster.
Oh man.
Sounds like a pretty intense memory. Do you want to talk about it?
I'm gonna have to unpack that one in therapy for sure.
Maybe a different time when we have an extra hour.
So Garrett, you talked to your wife about one thing to take away from the last 3 chapters. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. She wasn't able to join tonight, but we did record our discussion offline. So let's take a listen to that real quick.
Let me check the audio real quick so you'll see it right there.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
A, B, C.
Okay.
Do, re, mi.
See, you're going to be perfect at this. Okay, Brooke, thank you for joining.
Wait, don't sound like fake. Like, come on. Just sound real.
All right. Brooke, thanks for finally doing what you said you would do.
Okay.
No, for real. Thanks
Yeah.
for joining and being the first kind of guest on the discussion of the 7 principles for making marriage work.
I'm happy to be here. I really enjoyed the book. This is my second time reading through it. Well, 1.5 because I'd never finished it, but I was close.
You were close.
Yes.
Well,
but
thanks
it's a good book.
Thanks for going through it with us.
Yeah.
So you're listening along. I'm reading it, and we're trying this new segment where we're talking about one takeaway from the first 3 chapters. So we were kind of talking beforehand, but one thing you mentioned that was really encouraging in the 3rd chapter when he's talking about the 4 horsemen and the 6 signs that kind of like lead to divorce. One of those was bad memories. You had commented about how we look back, we've had challenges in our marriage, but there's been a lot of, like, when we look back, we both look on it with fondness.
Even if it was like a tough season and there were challenges in it, the overarching theme is like, wow, you're my best friend and I really enjoy being with you and we've made fun memories and that sort of thing. So that was cool to feel like that's a protective factor, that matters to marriages, to be able to look back with fondness.
Yeah.
That can be healthy and helpful.
Yeah. I feel like it's, just a measure of God's grace that, there have been times that they've been pretty heavy. They've been pretty challenging. And I even think of our time in China. I think I've talked about it in previous books, whether it's the mask of masculinity or this one, I think even in the introduction, and getting married, moving overseas, dating long distance, and then, getting married, learning how to live life together in a foreign country. There were just naturally a lot of challenges. And when I look back, it's like, I think of positive thoughts, but there were also a lot of, I remember Christmas was rough, and it was like, oh, first Christmas being married, you don't envision that. And, we're smiling about it.
So it's not that we don't like remember the hard things or struggles, but that overarching, it's like theme is, I remember those times with fondness, just like looking back, not necessarily the fights with fondness, but like overall, it kind of reminds me of like comparing it to having a newborn, where it's like, it's like when you are in those sleepless nights and you're feeding every like 20 minutes because they're cluster feeding and you're exhausted and you're like whisper yelling at each other, no, you be quiet, just gotta, all those things. And it's like really stressful. And then it's like 2 years removed from that. And it's like, oh, I miss when the boys were babies. Like, let's have another baby, And then it's like, so it's saying like, it doesn't erase the fact that those were really hard nights or sleepless nights or challenges. Like those really were, but the overall theme is that it was like a really good and joyous time.
Yeah.
And I think that does speak to like God's character and him being a redeeming God, where it's like, it doesn't mean you're not going to experience hardships or challenges, but like he can redeem those things. And that's what I think of when I think of marriage.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Well, this is the first time we're doing this segment, just giving it a shot. Is there anything else, like an encouragement in that regard, when you're thinking of the 6 signs, or maybe someone's listening in and there's a lot of, there's only men on this podcast, so hearing a female voice is nice. So from the wife's perspective, any encouraging words or anything to sign off on?
Yeah. Well, I would think like, since that really impacts me, of like being able to look back on our wedding and be like, oh, that was so fun. And I remember laughing and all the joy we had, or a trip we've taken and how much fun that was, like speaks to the importance of like setting aside time to be intentional with each other and create memories and do fun things with each other. Because when you are in like a valley or a season of struggle, like being able to remember those times where it's like, oh gosh, I'm not laughing now, I'm like super mad or my feelings are hurt, but like those little memories are like deposits in the bank.
Yeah.
And so take the time to go on a date night. Might not be weekly, right? Like it might not be that ideal thing, but that you're setting aside time and being intentional to go and to make those memories and to show each other that you're a priority.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Brooke.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brooke. I almost said Brooks Brothers. It's all about me. Thank you, Brooks Brothers, for having me.
Thanks for joining, Brooke. We appreciate the insight. and getting back to Principle 1. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Ladies, with all these filters and non-negotiables on dating apps, why not filter on the one thing that truly matters? Like your potential husband's last name. With inflationary costs on the horizon, the time and money it takes to change your last name is almost too much to bear. Now introducing Same Last Name Spouse Finder. This app is the latest dating app on the market and optimizes to show you only suitable men with your current maiden name. Why date a Smith when you're already a Jones, or a Gonzalez when you're a Martinez? Same Last Name Spouse Finder. We cut out all the fluff and show you men who you can really relate to. Same Last Name Spouse Finder. Saving time, money, and trips to the DMV. Disclaimer: this app is currently unavailable in Arkansas as we are unsure as to if they are your cousin.
That's my favorite part. So good.
That's a great one. Back to Principle 1, enhancing your love maps. John Gottman's research, based on studying thousands of couples, shows that the strongest relationships are built on a deep understanding of each other's worlds. This is what he calls a love map. A love map is the mental map you have of your partner's inner world, their dreams, fears, stressors, and joys. The deeper your love map, the stronger your emotional connection. Couples with strong love maps handle conflict better, stay connected, and have a more fulfilling relationship. Even if you're not married, this still applies to you. If you're dating, love maps help you build a strong foundation early. If you're single, this is still valuable because learning to ask deep questions and stay curious about someone's world is a skill that helps in any healthy relationship, romantic or not. What are love maps? Gottman says emotionally intelligent couples are intimately familiar with each other's worlds. Love maps include details like your partner's biggest current worries, what makes them feel loved, their favorite ways to unwind, and their hopes and dreams. Why do love maps matter? Couples who don't update their love maps often grow apart. Strong love maps act as a relationship GPS, helping you navigate changes in life together, and they build trust and emotional security. So for the first couple of questions, what's something new you've learned about your wife or partner recently that surprised you? And how do you make an effort to stay updated on her world?
I think I would lead personally with, it's been harder than I thought it would be having a kid and staying up on just connecting with each other and talking on a more regular basis. It's something that we've definitely had to be a lot more intentional about. With that being said, Ruth has gotten extremely passionate about a variety of like different health things recently. Just more simple foods, being more mindful of what's in certain medications, definitely doing a lot more due diligence of before like choosing providers and stuff, especially when it comes to like Daphne. I just want to make sure that we're taking good, smart decisions with her as she's growing and developing right now. And yeah, I think it's been an interesting thing because I think traditionally speaking in our relationship, I've been the one who's known more about healthcare and health generally speaking, but I feel like she has in a lot of ways surpassed me in particular with like nutrition and things related to medication in the last couple of years. And so that's something I've been like learning about Ruth. It's been a huge passion of hers, so that she's even like been considering through like, okay, what is this? I enjoy this. What could this look like to maybe even do vocation at one point? So that's kind of cool to see her getting that interesting. It's like, I wish I could say it goes perfectly because there's certain things where then we've had, I would say, more disagreements on some of the stuff that how she wants to go about things. Yeah, it's just like working it out, talking it out, and trying to come to a solution together, which isn't always perfect.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Wow. I learned something new about my wife, about her childhood last week that really surprised me. Unfortunately, I cannot remember now what that was, but I remember that it happened.
Oh my God.
We'll cut that out. We'll cut that out.
It's just an honest answer. Like, oh yeah, I learned that thing. And I'm racking my brain and I cannot think of what it was.
Garrett's love map is an unknown destination.
It's like the ocean. Man, yeah, I can't remember, but it was there. It happened.
Was it something that it was like an interesting thing to learn? Was it something that surprised you?
It was an activity she did growing up. I think so. She played tennis in high school,
I think it was tangentially related to tennis. It was like some sort of sport that she did. I was like, you played that growing up? But I can't remember for sure.
That's cool.
There's little things here and there, but clearly I need to do a better job of remembering.
Well, it's funny you say that. I feel like there's every once in a while you're having those stories and you're like, oh yeah, in the story that I've told you before, I forgot about this detail. And it's, those kind of things, if you've been married for a while and each other for a while, it's pretty rare, but it is kind of fun.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned about Emily, it's not all that recent, but it's newer to us, is that Emily really likes to listen to audiobooks. She's never been into reading many books before. I've always tried to get her to read books because I enjoy it. I think it's something that we could enjoy together, but I've never really truly been successful in getting her to read books. There were 2 times when we were dating that I bribed her that if she read all of The Lord of the Rings and all of Narnia, and I would buy her a pair of shoes after she finished the series, which she did it, and she got her pair of shoes. But ever since then, she hasn't really been interested in reading, but she's really into audiobooks, and it's great.
It's cool.
And we can talk about some of my favorite books now. And
so she's been listening to the same books that you've been reading?
Some of them, yeah. She does a lot of her own, and some that her friends are doing too. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's just another added thing to talk about throughout our day, and it's really enjoyable. Yeah.
Nice.
And then, Flez, to answer your second question, how do you make an effort to stay updated on her world? I think that's just a part of our normal routine, daily conversations about how our day is going. We often talk about planning for the future, what to do with our kids, what we're going to be saving money for, where we want to go for trips in the future.
You frequently talk about that?
Yeah, quite a bit.
That's good.
More than one time a week?
I mean, not all of those things.
Oh, okay. I'm like, wow, that's great. I just like that's a lot of like.
Yeah, we don't cover all those things every week. I don't know.
Well, the reason why I was just curious is because I just listened to an Art of Manliness podcast, and he had a marriage. I think I shared the episode with you guys, a marriage expert, something, and he recommended having a weekly kind of stand-up meeting where it's 20 to 30 minutes at the top of the week where you talk more or less business. Like, here are the soccer practices or the events we have, and there's dinner this night. I need you to go to the grocery store this day, and kind of map out the week. And then the rest of the week, you don't really have to talk business. You can just get to know each other when you spend time together. So that's why I was curious. It sounded somewhat similar to that. So that's cool that you have those regular touch points and talk about those deep family matters.
Yeah. Well, those things that you just mentioned, we probably do talk about them about once a week. Like what events do we have coming this week? What do we need to meal plan for? Where do we need to take the kids in the evening? We do that pretty much weekly.
That's awesome.
Are you guys good at asking questions like, what was the favorite part of your day instead of how was your day? Like more intentional. You guys good at that?
Yeah.
That's something I've been trying to do with my kids at dinner almost every night. And so we all eat dinner as a family. So I end up asking Emily the same question too. So yeah, that's a very regular thing for us.
Awesome.
I remember we were in Colorado this summer with the Brinkmeyers. So in their family, they do high-low buffalo. So it's like, what's your high, what's your low? And then what was something surprising, which is buffalo.
I didn't make that connection with the word.
But I would
buffalo.
say like on a regular basis, we'll ask that specific line of questions, and it's fun. Cool. Daphne doesn't usually have much thoughts on that though.
Buffalo video. Horsey?
Horsey? More ice cream?
Did you guys do the Love Maps questionnaire with your spouse?
Yeah, it was cool. I actually won, but
Nice. Way to go, get her, Flez.
I beat her.
I lost. I'll throw that in there. I lost.
Oh my god, that was so funny.
It's just 20 questions about your partner's like favorites or things going on in their life. I mean, some of these things were so basic. It's like, how would people not know these things? But I was just curious. So you won. So did you get them all right?
I think I got all of them right. Yeah, she missed my birthday somehow. She said May 2nd, not May 1st.
Oh.
Well, she hasn't experienced.
That was like
it
a
yet
big
with you.
pause. It's like, whoa.
So
Red
close.
flag. Red flag.
It was a cool exercise because afterwards she told me that she thinks I know her better than anybody else besides maybe her mom, which is pretty cool. Like some of the questions, like what's like your greatest fear, stuff like that. I had really good answers for those things for her.
Yeah.
So it was a cool activity. I think it brought us closer together for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, all these activities, and that's what they're designed to do, right? It's how you grow together, understanding and knowing your person or your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So in the questionnaire, there were 20 questions, like you mentioned, Rob, and his grading rubric was if you scored 10 or higher, saying true, like yes, I can name my partner's best friends or current worries.
Which is only 50%.
Yeah, so it's over 50%. Or 50% or higher. This is an area of strength for your marriage. Below 10 could use some improvement. So yeah, no judgment. Just curious, was anyone below 10 here? It sounds like no, but just safe space. Just curious.
20 out of 20 here, boy.
Let's move on to why love maps matter in marriage. They help you avoid emotional disconnection. So many relationships fail not because of big fights, but because of gradual emotional disconnection. A couple examples are a husband is focused on work stress and doesn't realize his wife is struggling with something personal, or a wife assumes her husband is the same person he was 5 years ago without recognizing how he has changed. Gottman emphasizes that a happy marriage is built on a strong friendship. Friendship in marriage means knowing and appreciating each other, feeling understood and valued, and being a team through life's ups and downs. Even if you're not married, this still matters. In dating, they help you see if you're truly compatible. If you're single, this applies to friendships too, because deep connections aren't just about romance. The more you practice being curious and present with people in your life, the better prepared you'll be for a future relationship. Next question. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you didn't know something important about your partner? How did that impact your relationship?
I think if anything, it's probably more just details of specific events or things of their life that you've known, but since you haven't talked about it in years, or it's a memory that's been 4 years ago or whatever, it's harder to remember. So you're kind of like, hey, what did we do again that one time? Like, parts of the details, but you don't know all of it, right? And maybe that's the fun of it too, of just like both coming to the realization of what a memory actually entailed based on what both of you remember about it.
More often with us, it's like you don't necessarily not know something important specifically, but maybe you assume like, okay, this is how something will go with us. Like, for instance, we're looking at buying a house and we both had our own assumptions about the priorities we both have in finding the right property or focusing on, one thing being a priority over another. And we had multiple sort of iterations of talking about these things before we were both on the same page in terms of like, okay, I've mapped out that I know what you want and what's most important to you, and you've mapped out the same for me. And now we can finally go look for something without any major conflict. When we see something, we'll just kind of know it's what each other wants or doesn't want. And I would say more often than forgetting or not knowing something specific, it's like, okay, I had assumed some things maybe I shouldn't have assumed, or that maybe the love map I was using was outdated.
Do you feel like that caused, like in particular with this as it relates to buying a house, Thomas, did that cause any conflict, or was there any component where you're like, oh, we don't think the same way with this? Did you face that at all?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the way we were doing it is she kind of had in mind lifestyle and our needs at the top of the list, whereas I had, budget and finances at the top of my list a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So we kind of almost evened each other out. Even though there was a little bit of conflict there, when I really liked the idea of something that she didn't like, or vice versa, we ended up kind of coming to a place to where we were like, okay, well, it's good that we're both not solely focused on the same stuff, so that we don't get kind of off balance, if you will. But I mean, I feel like there's always a little bit of conflict when you have a difference in opinion about some of these large life decisions.
Yeah. I think you saying that just makes me think in relation to your question, Adam, where I don't think there's these big moments where it's like, oh, I forgot something, or there was something totally new that came up. But you do have things like Thomas mentioned, like this, that at least I've experienced. So Ruth and I have been married almost 10 years now. We were together for like 3 years before that. And when you come up on like these big decisions, buying a home, when we moved out of the Midwest, whenever we started having conversations about having kids, how to raise a kid. And I think these are the conversations where it's like it's just a conversation you haven't had before, maybe. And so again, like you said, it's like you sometimes have these assumptions like, oh, this person's going to think this or think that. Like I think about as it relates to the house stuff, where I think we were probably a little bit the opposite, where I wanted to kind of dream more, and Ruth I wanted to have a nicer home that had nicer things to it, whereas Ruth wanted like something that was more practical. And like I was more okay with like kind of moving out of like the city, whereas she like wanted to stay closer to the city. And I think too, like with like on kind of both when it comes to like those big changes, but also I think there's been a couple times I can think of where Ruth has slowly changed, or I have slowly changed with something. And then so it's like all of a sudden it hits you. You're like, oh, you're different in this way than you used to be in the past. And I think one thing for us is that Ruth was always, and you guys would probably all attest this from what you remember with Ruth, is she always was fairly reserved and didn't really share her opinion a ton. And I would say it's really been a really good thing and a cool thing, but I would say she probably found her voice a lot, probably like 2018, 2019. So maybe a little before then, but it was a couple of years into our marriage, and it was a challenge. It was a change, but the change was a challenge at times because it was like our normal pattern of things. Like maybe I normally made a decision on something and that was fine in the past, but that wasn't going to be fine anymore. And I don't think I was anyway being like an oppressive person with this, but it was just things where it was like, I was used to making the decision, and then it came to her. She's like, oh no, I want to have more of a say now. And so it was just kind of adjusting.
That reminds me of a lot of people I've just kind of met and talked to in my career, because I've done a lot of projects where I'm out in the field with people who travel for a living, and they're frequently away from their spouse for months at a time. Yep. And when they start to tell you stories about how things are going with their family life or their wife or their kids, and they tell you some of the stories of like, oh yeah, I've been divorced twice, or I've had, my kid's not happy with me because I haven't seen him in so long, or my wife wants me to come home, or whatever, you can just tell the love maps are outdated there. Like they don't spend enough time together to even have a chance to update these things. Yeah. And, that's really hard. And I feel like time is a huge component. I read through these things and I just keep coming back to like this, Flez, you mentioned time spent together, but also time being present together as being a huge thing. That even if you don't travel for work, how much are you actually present when you're together versus doing something or on your phone or watching something or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I feel like I struggle with that sometimes. Just you're there, you're physically present, but are you mentally, emotionally present to the conversation? Mm-hmm. Did you miss the point of what your spouse was trying to make, or did you even hear the story completely? Right. I think that's been an area of growth within me, I'll say. Yeah. So, but man, even this book, like you hear of this Rory guy and he doesn't even know the family dog. Like, bro, what are you doing? Like, you don't even know the dog. Like, I just have some of these stories in this. I mean, I don't know. They seem very extreme where it's like, how does this guy not know the dog's name? Is
that the doc that's addicted to work?
Yeah.
I bet you a lot of people in his situation end up putting all their attention towards their career because they've poured so much into it. And then it's like the sunken cost fallacy or whatever, to where it's like you have to double down on your career every single time you have to make a decision because you've already gone so far. You can't step back now, to spend time with your family or pay attention to your dog.
I don't know if I had a specific moment where I realized I didn't know something about my spouse. I think it's more of a gradual thing, but Emily's very good at hiding or not showing her worries and anxiety. And so I have no idea that she's worrying about 20, 30 different things at one time until they all come out at once. And I didn't realize that until probably a year after we were married. I just thought she was always super chill, super go with the flow, you know? But deep down, she's not talking about all the things that are running through her mind all the time. And so when those things come out, it's like, whoa, where is this coming from? Like, we haven't talked about this at all. I had no idea you were going through this.
Yeah.
So that's happened several times over the years where, Garrett, I think you coined it a while back, like a volcano or something, where everything just builds up and then explodes all at once. You can't see it happening underneath, but when it comes out, yeah, it's pretty big. And so I think we both need to get better about it, but we have been trying to talk about those things more often.
Yeah,
that's good. I know I've talked about like how we've kind of instituted these bi-weekly, monthly check-ins. It just kind of gives us each a space to share things that are on our heart or things that we recognize and see in each other. But yeah, I can see how that doing something like that creates a space, like a safe space, a known safe space for the spouse to be like, hey, yeah, I'm actually still struggling with these things, or this is worrying me. That way she knows it's coming, you know it's coming, or if she glosses over it, right, you can share and be like, hey, is it everything okay, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a great recognition or an awareness. Thanks for
I
sharing.
feel like a lot of times if one person's struggling or stressed out about something, the other doesn't want to bring anything up to make, to pile on to that burden, even though it's better to have it out in the open and not let it build up. But I feel like that happens a lot.
Yeah, so some practical ways we can deepen our love maps are to ask questions and stay curious. The love map exercise, or any of the exercises really in the book that we already talked about, and then just making it a habit to set aside, regular time to catch up, weekly check-ins. And then, so some challenges and common pitfalls. So one could be not making time for connection. Life gets busy, careers, kids, stress, but prioritizing connection is essential. Assuming you already know everything, your partner isn't the same person they were 5 years ago. Keep learning about them. Technology and distractions. Checking your phone instead of engaging with your partner weakens emotional connection. Emotional distance creeping in. When couples stop updating their love maps, they can become emotionally distant roommates rather than partners. The last question is, what gets in the way of staying updated on your partner's world? How do you overcome those challenges?
I think time. I just feel like not having enough time with each other that's not taken up by either a distraction or just trying to, solve all the problems life throws at you, or, do all the tasks you have to do. I mean, today's world is pretty demanding on anybody, but couples too, especially if you have kids. So yeah, just trying to find the time to keep updated with each other's love maps is probably one of the biggest things, like biggest resource that people lack, I would think.
Yeah. One thing we always talk about is curiosity. So rather than like the guilt of not knowing something about your spouse, like be super excited and curious about finding out something new about your spouse.
Yeah.
I think that's where the landscape of the conversation changes from, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't know that, you should have known that, to, wow, I'd love to tell you about that.
Yeah, that's good.
Let me share this with you. Because yeah, it's exciting to find out new things about your
I
spouse.
think that's really good, Rob. I think what I hear that and I think about, like, for Ruth and I, it's just like putting the energy into it. So Ruth and I went through the questionnaire, I think 2 nights ago. We happened to have been having like a conflict that had lasted like 2 days before this, where we just like were kind of butting heads about stuff. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, should we like kind of force to do this activity? We did this activity and it helped. And getting to sit down and talk about things that you enjoy. I love Ruth. She loves me. Like, we love to get to know each other more and spend time together. And so I think that, in a marriage, if you're both aspiring to, or a relationship, if you're trying to make this relationship as best as you can, when you actually put the energy and time in, I feel like it's always very fruitful and ends up being like a really fun thing. And yeah, can just leave you with kind of a good feeling, want you to do more activity like that, but also grow you closer towards your spouse.
All right, so to close this episode up, love maps are the foundation of a strong, lasting relationship. The more you know your partner's world, the deeper your connection. Small daily check-ins build long-term intimacy. Challenge for everyone for the week is to ask your partner one new question about their life and just pay attention to how that conversation strengthens your connection. Next time, we'll be diving into Principle 2, nurture your fondness and admiration. Gottman says that couples who maintain a sense of respect and appreciation for each other have a much stronger foundation. So we'll be talking about how to keep that admiration alive in long-term relationships and how it impacts marriage and commitment. Before we wrap up, take a moment to reflect on your own love map. How well do you truly know your partner's inner world? Are there areas where you can grow and deepen that understanding? And whether you're married, dating, or single, strong relationships don't just happen, they're built over time. The way you connect with people now sets the foundation for future relationships. If something stood out to you today, put it into practice this week. Ask your partner or even a close friend a new question. Really listen to their response and see how it strengthens your connection. We'd love to hear your thoughts, whether it's something that stood out to you from today's discussion or how your love map challenge goes. Send us a message or share your experience with us on Instagram at Books Brothers Podcast. Check out the show notes if you're interested in any of the questionnaires that we talked about in the episode today. Thanks for tuning in to the Books Brothers Podcast. We appreciate you being part of this conversation and working to build stronger relationships. Until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, keep connecting, and we'll catch you on the flip side.